There's a type of player that likes to buy 100 games per year or 200 games per year and play a little bit here and there. And there's a player who's had a good experience with one game. Whenever that game brings out something new, they're like, oh, yeah, I want to play that. I like experiences that build as time goes on. I like this experience that the longer you do it and the longer you play it together with other people, the more there is that feeling of camaraderie and there's a history of the game.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Colors of Web3 and Entrepreneurship. This is episode 77. My name is Lum, your Web3 host. For those of you who are new to the show, Colors of Web3 and Entrepreneurship is a show highlighting the journeys of builders and innovators in Web3 and entrepreneurship. Some topics, especially in Web3, may get technical, but we do our best to keep it accessible for most of you here today. I'm joined by Xanthos Vouldis. He's the CEO of Studio Vale. Xanthos, could you give a quick introduction by yourself?
Sure. Hello, and thank you for having me. My name is Xanthos. I am the CEO of Studio Vale, founder and CEO. I started this company about 4 years ago to create video games. Before that, I was working in the games industry for about 10 years. So yeah, that's where I am right now.
Nice, interesting. So I'm sure many people would be very interested in knowing more about like your professional career background. Maybe if you could walk us from the first role in the game industry, working forward up until the present day. Maybe just highlight some of the interesting
Uh,
games you have built and some project that you remember, things like that.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I came to Japan in 2011. I had done 1 year study abroad before that in Kansai Gaidai. And in 2011, I studied some Japanese for about a year. And then I started working in the games industry here in Japan. Over my time, I worked at companies like Cygames, Triace, Electronic Arts, DMM Games, and a few others. Some of the projects I worked on were FIFA, Dragon Quest, Star Ocean, Idolmaster, Rage of Bahamut, and lots and lots of others.
Nice. Okay, so you came to Japan. What brought you to Japan? Was this for school or for work?
So I always wanted to make video games. I had seen the sort of Western side of gaming culture, gaming development, and so on when I was younger. And at the same time, I liked a lot of Japanese games, but I didn't know how they're made. So I didn't understand their creative process, how the team came up with all those crazy ideas, the characters with the spiky hair, and so I'm like, how did they think of that? So I realized that by reading books and watching movies about it, I wouldn't quite get the whole story. I realized that understanding the culture a little bit was probably important. So I thought of coming to Japan, learning some Japanese at least, and if possible, working on some local companies here and experience firsthand how these concepts and how these games are made. And possibly I could learn something for my own game development.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think we know that Japan is still, I mean, there's some really big giants in game studios that make game here, right? And then that's why it's so, yeah, I think it makes sense. I'm actually, so you said you work at so many different companies like Cygames and Electronic Arts and game. I mean, obviously these are the giants of gaming world in Japan, but also abroad as well. Could you share a bit more about like what is a creative process of a game? And you were talking about that. Can you touch upon that? I'm also curious because I also don't know how a game is made.
So for games, I think every studio has its own secret recipe about how it's done. But if I were to sort of put it in a framework, and actually I like putting it in a framework because it makes it easy to navigate. In fact, that's almost entirely what I talk about in my YouTube channel, if you're into game design like that. But the framework in a simple way is kind of like how you design any everyday object, right? So let's say you wanted to design a chair. You would say, okay, this chair is meant for a dinner table, for example. So it's supposed to hold an adult and it's supposed to be up to this price and these materials and this height and so on. So even before you start constructing the chair, or even drawing the chair's specifications on a piece of paper, you come up with some targets, some concept, and some requirements for the purpose of this item. And then you try to work within these limitations to deliver the best possible product, right? So if you take this like very standard design process to games, I think one of the most common creative methodologies for this is as people, and particularly as children, we find all these fun things, a bug, or playing a game with our friends, or something that we see out in nature, and we think, if I could show that to someone, if I could put it into a game as an experience and I could share it with people, that would be fun. It's a very childlike emotion to find something fun and want to share it with your parents or your friends. So I think for many game designers that feeling is there, and the way it happens most often in our adult life is we see a game or a video game and we think, okay, this game is fun as it is. How about if this video game was, I don't know, with zombies or with dinosaurs or with an epic fantasy setting, or with I don't know, crazy cars or something. So we start imagining all these versions of the game, all these variations, and then we think, that thing doesn't exist. Perhaps I should make it. So that's where the motivation often comes from.
Yeah,
Then is where the process I just described happens. So you think, okay, there's this action game out there and it's with soldiers, but what if it was with dinosaurs instead, for example? And you start thinking about how that would work out, how the controls would need to be, what sort of actions the main character would have to take to complete this game, what would be the overarching story or goal of the game, if there is one. Otherwise, if it's a pure multiplayer PvP match, what would the goals of that match be? And yeah, basically when you finish that list, you're off to prototyping and polishing it.
I see. Interesting. Well, thank you for simplifying it down. I'm sure it's probably much more complex than that, right? Because
So
each
it's
of
a bit
those,
more complicated than that, yeah.
yeah, for sure. I'm sure like each of those processes is probably involved like maybe hundreds or various different
So
teams as well. Yeah,
absolutely, the actual development of it is more complicated, but more often than not, in my experience in the industry, the conceptual stage is more complicated as well, simply because there is no clear direction often. Now, this sounds strange because if you think of any game you like, you think, this is such a good game. Obviously, that's what they were trying to do from the beginning. It just took a while to get there. But the truth is that for most projects, when they begin, it is rather unclear what sort of goal there is for the game itself, what sort of visuals and what sort of gameplay experience and so on. So most of these things um, emerge in the game upon trial and error, and that's why I say that. I mean, that's fine. That's how most games are made so far. But it's just my opinion, my observation, that if we were to follow a more standard design framework around this, I think this can reduce the time we experiment with a game, or rather, we do more experiments on the things that really matter for the enjoyment of the game. Getting to that goal is easier because we know from the beginning what that goal is. So, if, for example, you know that you're taking this soldier game and you're doing it with dinosaurs, it's pretty, it's one thing. It's not maybe dinosaurs or zombies or whales. It's more clear. Yeah, that's my experience.
interesting. Yeah, so it sounds like a lot of trial and error throughout the whole process, and to find what actually works and what makes sense, right? But I think in the game there's a lot of imaginations. Obviously, some of the things that might not make sense. For example, like dinosaurs are already extinct, but yeah, in game it's possible. But yeah, I'm still somewhat curious. Like, what are the typical roles that are needed in like a studio game? I guess as like designer, graphic artist, and voiceover. I don't know. You tell me physics,
Yeah, yeah.
simulator, right? You tell me. And and also could you tell about like what role did you play in those previous games? Like, were you the director, producer? I'm not sure.
So typically, I mean, I guess we can take it right from the minimum size, right? So you've probably seen some amazing single person projects out there that were all made by one person. So that means that everything you see in that game was either made by that person or thought of by that person and then outsourced to some studio or some other professional. But In a simple way, on the production side, you have the game designer, who is a person who comes up with the rules and the story of the game, the world. And this is not in the visual sense. So that person does not draw all the images of the game, even though he might draw just a few simple ones just to set the concept. That person typically sets the rules on in text form. So if we're talking about the game designer of chess, for example, that would be how many pieces there are per player, what does the chessboard look like, how far can each piece move, and so on. This like textual information is is stuff the game designer thinks of. And then you have the artists who create all the visual stuff for the game. So the character models, the backgrounds, the character illustrations, UI, and everything related to the things you see. The programmers, of course, create all the backbone for this. So they take the rules from the game designer and they implement them into code, essentially. They make it so that when you press your forward stick to move forward, the game engine interprets that and moves your character's location in the game forward, for example. And they also connect all the visual information you have with that too. So if the 3D character walks, then they give the trigger for the 3D character to actually do the walking animation. And finally, you have sound, which again, it's a huge category, but basically everything you hear comes from the sound person. If it's a very, very large project, the sound team can have several members. If it's not such a large project, it can have a few or even just one person. If it's a really, really tiny team, maybe one of the other members doubles as the sound director or music director, which means while they're doing their other job, they're also handling the sound, matching what kind of sounds are good for this game or make sense for this character to the character. And for really, really tiny games, basically you can get assets from the asset store, so pre-made sounds, and just drag and drop into the engine and say, when this bomb explodes, just play, and that's enough. It's yeah, game development is really scalable in that sense.
I see. Interesting. Yeah. So it sounds like there's a lot of these modular PCs that can also be reused as well, right? From external.
Yeah, yeah, and that's when it comes to all the development related skills. And of course, outside of that, you have the producer who looks at the project in total as a product. So the budget, the team makeup, the schedules, and so on. He makes sure that as a product, the game is delivered on time. And then you have all the surrounding disciplines for management and promotion. So some sort of marketing people, HR, finance, and all the other standard company things.
Interesting. Yeah. So I think it takes quite a lot of people to make a game, but I'm quite curious about how people can make like well, you said also like minimum size single person as well, right? So the one person that does everything. But I feel like with nowadays with like the help of AI, I've seen some like AI created game, but obviously it's not going to be like studio quality, or I think in your industry it's called triple A,
Yeah.
right? Triple A quality. Yeah.
I think in a funny way, AI is the second best thing you can do for creating a game quickly. So asking the AI to write some code or maybe create some images and so on. Of course you could do that. But if you want it to be like as quickly as possible with making a small, easy to make game, then going for free assets, I think, is even faster than AI. And if you're wondering, well, where do I find all these free assets, these images and these sounds and so on? I think most asset stores, like the Unity Asset Store, Unreal Asset Store, and other similar ones, they do have a range for free assets. So you can set the UI to only show you free assets, and you can drag and drop those into your project, and there you go. You don't have to ask the AI anything. You can get started. Yeah, and if you're wondering where to start with the code with that, most game engines have templates for all the basic game types. So a typical action game where a single character is moving on screen and attacking with a sword or something, or a simple racing game, or a simple text-based game where you just move through different states of the game until you get to the conclusion. These are pretty common game types, so most engines have templates for those. So you take one of those templates and you just replace the words, add more scenes, and so on, and add different completion conditions, and you can you can get something pretty decent done in a very short time.
Interesting. Yeah. I didn't know there's also like templates you can apply to games, but yeah, well, I guess you learn new thing every day. I know like there's some like reusable character and component, but I didn't know there's like even framework or like simple templates for fighting action, like you said. That's pretty cool though. Nice. And well, before we deep dive into your current company, Studio Vale, just one fun question. Can you share with us what do you do for fun in your free time? Is it playing video games or something else?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I also like playing Dungeons and Dragons. I've been playing it as a dungeon master for the last, I don't know, 30 years or so. So I really enjoy it. Otherwise, I, well, because our job is so sedentary, going to the gym, going running, taking walks, and so on, anything I can do to move my body, I try to get some of that in.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, D&D. I think Dungeon and Dragon is like a imaginary world type of game, right? Where you, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I think it's amazing. Like you said, it's all imaginary. You can have some visual aids in the sense of like little figurines, or maybe you can show an image to the players and say, now you are in this location or something. But yeah, almost all of it takes place in your mind, and that's the beauty and the elegance of it. So video games have the beauty of the graphics you can see. If they want to make an impressive dragon, they can just show you the impressive dragon. While if you want to create the same dragon in Dungeons and Dragons, you can just describe it. So the dungeon master says it has, I don't know, blue skin and horns, and its tongue is made of, I don't know, potatoes or something. You can say whatever you want, and you don't have to show anything for it. All you have to do is like come up with a fun concept, and then the player's mind takes the role of rendering that for themselves. So I think it's an excellent way to create with no time and no effort needed whatsoever. If you wanted to make a video game that has the same elements, it would take way longer, right? And that's why I
yeah,
also think when people ask me what's the best way to learn game design specifically, so the rules and world building side of a game, I mean, unless you have access to tools to make a video game all by yourself and you have the skill and all that, I think other than that, playing Dungeons and Dragons or one of the similar tabletop RPGs as a dungeon master is just about the best training you can have to be a game designer, because there's a lot of material already published. There's already several adventures by companies who operate in that space. So you have lots of existing examples for how to make an okay, very decent campaign or just session. And then when you play a few of those, you think, okay, in that adventure we went to this floating castle and we did so and so. But what if I wanted to go to an underground temple, for example? And then you can take these published adventures as templates and start modifying them for yourself. And again, there's no cost to doing that, because all you have to do is write on a piece of paper, it's a subterranean temple instead, and it has like water elementals for monsters. So you can do whatever you want. And the amazing thing of this is, in the games industry, when we're making video games, the developers themselves are rarely in contact with the players. So you don't get to see what your players see and feel and how they react when they play your video game. For the vast majority of players, the only thing you know is how many sales you got per month for your game, right? You don't know how players experience the game. But in D&D, you come up with an adventure, you think of some cool ideas, you have a vague concept of why they're going to be fun for your players, but then you get to test it. Then you get to play it for people and see, like, in real time, the reaction, or like, I don't know, 4 or 5 humans in front of you. Like, did they like the game? Which one of them liked the game? Which parts of the game they liked, and which parts of the adventure did they engage the most with? Like, did some people enjoy the role playing in particular, or the combat, or exploring the setting and so on? And when it's your first time doing these things as a dungeon master, or the first sessions, like, so many things are happening at the same time that it's difficult to like take in all this amazing feedback you get. But if you get a little bit used to it, and you can start understanding the different aspects of the game that each player enjoys, then you can start designing for it. So you think, okay, for the next session, I know this guy likes the combat, and that guy likes the role playing, and that guy likes I don't know, gliding through the air on the on their airship or whatever. And that cycle of getting the feedback from the players, thinking of what to put in the next session, putting it and getting their feedback again is just a lot of fun in D&D, I think.
Fascinating. Wow. I mean, I cannot even imagine how you can imagine. So you have to keep track of like the details, right? I mean, also this is the thing you come up with and keep track of. And I don't know how many player typically play in around few, 4 or 5.
So I
Yeah.
guess the standard size is one dungeon master and 4 players.
Okay.
I think
So
that's
4. Yeah.
considered the ideal. I like it as well. But obviously you can modify it as much as you want, right? So you can go down to 1 player or up to, I don't know. I've heard of people playing with 10 players, although I think that's madness. But if it's fun, it's fun. And for the dungeon master, it's like you said, every person likes to keep it as light or as heavy as they enjoy. And sometimes, because the group is all about the details, so some groups like to measure how many food supplies they have with them and how many arrows they have left, and like if they're exploring some cave, they like to make detailed maps of the cave, like, "Oh, we went to this side, now we should go to this side," and so on. Maybe there's one helper to the DM, or 2 helpers, or sky's the limit.
Nice. Yeah. That's really cool. I never play, but I actually think I had another guest on the podcast who's also enjoying like Dungeon and Dragon. She shared a bit about it. I'll probably leave a link up here. People I want to check that out. Cool. And yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and deep dive into your company. Feel free to maybe share with us a bit about the background, how the company got started, incorporated, and then afterward, feel free to share any presentation slide or things that are relevant that you want to share.
Sure, sure,
Yeah.
sure. So at that time, I was still working in other companies, other game companies. And because of all the people I had met over time in the games industry, I was starting to get requests to help out in other projects that my friends from the games industry with whom I had worked with before were now involved in. Things like, could you do some game design for us? Could you help us with organizing our graphics pipeline and so on. I was getting all these requests, and of course I was working at a company as a Seishine at the time, so technically wasn't allowed to do all these side projects. But I just wanted to help. I knew that my friends, they weren't just asking for the sake of asking. They had a problem, and they needed help solving. So that's when I thought, well, if I switch to my own company, then I can help all these people, and I can do it without anybody, being left out, essentially. So that's when I made the switch. So let me see if I can show you, if I can share my screen here.
Sure. Yeah. Please feel free to. Yeah.
So that's when I made the switch, and I created this company. And back at that time, we were doing mainly game design outsourcing and some graphics outsourcing. So one of the graphics tools we like a lot is called Houdini. It's very good with procedural generation of graphics. It's very good with creating vast environments and very realistic scenes. If
So
on top of
Houdini is
that,
used to make the fancy graphic like this, like the background graphics. Is that right?
yeah, for this part, and then
Okay.
as AI got introduced, we found out we can combine it to make like very, very impressive looking results.
I
And the
see.
cool thing about creating all of this with a consistent way in the background is that if you just use AI to create a cool image, it's slightly different every time. So you can't art direct it as easily. But if you're happy with, let's say, the general details of an image, and you only use AI to do some accents and add all this nice detail, then it makes some workflows and some sort of still images um, look very impressive faster than doing everything by hand, for example. And also, we really like 2D characters, like interesting illustrations of 2D characters. So that's another aspect of what we did, and um, that's what we were doing in the early days to get the company started and try to help basically as many people as I could back then. Nowadays, we're more focused on our own game development, though.
I see. Cool. Yeah. So you were doing that, but like the majority, I guess, back then when you began, like 4 years ago, right? But
Yeah,
now you said you're doing your own game development. Can you share more with us about that? What are you building?
sure. So nowadays we're making a game that's all about battles with big dieselpunk style airships. I can't share any details about the game itself. I cannot show you anything from inside. But if you're wondering what a dieselpunk airship is, I can show you some of the amazing art that's floating online,
Okay. Sure.
and maybe
Feel free
that
to.
will give you a hint. So if in Google
Cool.
you Google dieselpunk airship, then you're
Okay.
gonna see all these sorts of images. So it seems that this style of art, this kind of ship, is really popular. Lots of people like to do this type of art, and I think it's
Interesting.
really cool. And personally, I think it's type of aesthetic that's not very commonly found in games. I mean, there's lots of I don't know, post-apocalyptic style or even dieselpunk style games where you control a human character and you go around the world, and sometimes you even have one of these crazy ships somewhere in the background. Maybe you can get on it for a little bit, or maybe you can see it somewhere in the game. But in my experience, I hadn't played a game where that's all about this kind of airship. And I was thinking, well, how cool would it be if you could be the captain of such a ship and do all the all the captain things around it? So select the guns, upgrade it, select which um, auxiliary functions you wanted to have, like radar or maybe a small craft that detaches and goes away to do things, like gather resources or I don't know, attack your enemies and so on. What if you could um, select the crew for the ship? I know that's another thing that's not very common in games. Being able to manage the entire crew of such a big ship like this, but yeah, we thought it's fun. And finally, when you have all that together, how cool would it be to do battles against other players? And of course, that's not in a strategic or turn-based kind of way. We're doing it in a real-time tactical kind of way. So it's the experience you would get from governing this kind of like big and heavy ship around. So it's not like an F-16 or an X-wing kind of fighter. It's more about where do you want to move this massive beast in the next 30 seconds or so, and manage it throughout the match.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. So many different variation over there. So I think I've seen those like airship in some of the Japanese anime, maybe Attack on Titan, and maybe seen in some other game as well
Yeah,
before.
yeah, yeah.
In the
That's the
past.
thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? They keep popping here and there all the time.
Okay. So how is the game play? Like you is this like a online multiplayer game or how's it
Yeah,
work?
yeah, sure. So what I can say right now is that there will be an online mode where you can be in a team with other similar airships, and you will be fighting against an enemy team of airships. So here the goal is to cooperate with people in your team in groups of four, so in squads, and try to take advantage as much as possible of the unique capabilities in each airship. So it's not so much about running ahead on your own and being a single unit, but trying to fight in a group and try to use your teammates as much as possible. That's the sort of experience we're aiming for. And of course, from my experience with this kind of like vehicle combat type of game, because there's typically a lot of mechanics, so the thickness of the armor and how far you can shoot and what's the angle of impact for the shells on the enemy armor and so on, this kind of game likes to go really deep on those mechanics. And of course, we also have our own mechanics, so the crew and the auxiliary functions and all that, plus the fact that you're flying at the same time. So it's most games of this type are on a 2D playing field. We also have the 3D element. Anyway, it can be a lot for a new player. So what we want to do is, for every airship that we release, to have a single player campaign also released for that particular ship. So you can have a safe and relaxed environment in single player to play with the airship, get exposed to a little bit of its story, learn a little bit about the world, like why it's there, what's special about this ship, and so on. And little by little, get used to its particular armaments, its cool weapons, its cool auxiliary functions, and so on. Use it a few times in that offline safe environment, and then when you feel ready and comfortable with it, you can challenge yourself and jump into the multiplayer.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So is this game, do you play it on PC, on online on the web, like in a
Yeah,
browser?
so we're aiming it for PC.
Okay. So you just open up the browser and then you can join the game and play with other
Um,
player.
I'm not sure if browser will be enough. It might be a bit heavy on the graphics just for the browser,
I
but
see. I see. Okay. So you have to
yeah,
download the game from somewhere and then install it and
yeah, it's
play
gonna
in the
be more
in the
traditional
way.
like that.
Okay. I
Although,
see.
yeah, now that you mention it, one of the amazing things about the technologies nowadays is the quality of graphics you can stream, right? So even if your PC doesn't have a monster graphics card, there's still services that can render it and stream it to you. So yeah, we're looking at what's possible for us.
I see. Makes sense. So sounds like this is like a Windows mainly game then, because I know gaming usually for Windows. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a start. It's a good start. We don't want to aim for too many platforms, especially at the beginning. Although if we have a good base, then it should be much easier to expand after that.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, Windows usually. I mean, most of the hardcore gamers are still there. Um, what anything else you can share about the game, like timeline? What anything for you to know?
We're aiming a release of sometime next year. We will be able to share more as the time gets closer to that. Other than that, if you're looking for it on one of the popular platforms where you find games, probably you're not going to find it there. What we want to do is keep the game closed community and invitation only. So that means this game will not be publicly available to buy in the traditional sense, at least. We will start with a group of people that we already know like this game, like the concept, and they want to get involved as quickly as possible, as early as possible in the development process. And then, having started from that base, I keep it invitation only. So either through us as the developers or from the existing players of the game, slowly grow the community. And we want to do it this way because we want to make sure that everybody's having fun with the game. If someone discovers a bug or a gameplay issue or something like that, there is a close enough contact with us, the developers, to get our attention and fix it as quickly as possible, and not try to do the typical strategy where you do a lot of promotion before release and you try to get all these pre-orders and then have this giant release and then people discover all these errors and they're like, oh my god, this game is horrible. We're like, well, what if we took a different approach to this and we didn't set a crazy big release as a standard for ourselves? And what if instead we could take the time and work with a small number of people to improve the quality of the game as much as possible? And when we're confident and we're getting good feedback from our existing group, slowly move forward to make sure that the new players who are joining the game at that time are having a good experience as well.
Interesting approach. Yeah, like invitation only and growing from there. Wait, so does that mean is the game free to play, or how do you like you touch?
It's not free to play. It's gonna have uh, a rather steep cost actually. So it's going to be, what can I say? I can't share too many specifics, but we're looking at a few $100s for starting out, and it's gonna go up to a few $1,000s if you want the shiny thing. But at the same time, we also want to do more than many other games out there. So the campaign I mentioned is one of these things. Also, we want to have a system for all the characters in the game to be able to talk to you in natural language. So not like a typical game where you talk to an NPC and they have their predetermined lines that they say, but a system for them to do more natural conversation with you, something that's relevant to the content of the game, not just generic conversation, but like specific to your mission, the enemies you have in front of you, the function of your ship, and so on. So you can ask specific information about the enemy you're facing right now, or if you don't remember something from the tutorial, you can ask, by the way, how did that work? Just very, very normal things that throughout my game playing history, I wish I could do in other games I played until now. And now, finally, that I'm in a position to select all these little variables about the game, this is something that I want to offer to our players.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So I guess like so right now you probably have like some already tester, right? I'm curious like who would be or what is the typical profile of the gamers of the game? Like
What can I say? I guess I noticed this trend where, for example, and in a sense, I'm like that as well in my game playing habit, where I don't really buy many things. So if I look back at my purchases of games and video games over a year, I don't buy many different things. So I don't have my in my Steam library, I don't know, 100 games that I bought last year. But for the things that I know I like, for the games that I know that are my favorites and I'm having a lot of fun in, I usually just buy everything there is, all the DLCs, all the little extra things. And I never think about the cost because, well, first of all, they don't release that many things, so it's their releases are pretty far and spaced out, so it's not that many per year. But on the other hand, I know that everything I've gotten from that game has been worth it for me. So I've spent dozens of hours per additional piece of content. So I know that whatever I spent in that game, I felt like I got the value out of. And I've had this experience with a few video games and with a few physical games, so board games and stuff like that. So that's the experience I hope to create. I want to be able to offer more than a similar game of the same type. And for example, another thing that we want to do that, I don't know, it's kind of crazy, but I'm thinking that if I was a player and I got this, I would be pretty stoked. Is I mentioned before for each campaign that you finish, rather for each ship, there is a single player campaign you can finish to learn the game and learn how that ship plays. So what we want to do is when you finish one of those campaigns, we want to ship out a physical model of your airship in the form that it was the moment you finished that campaign. So, with the number of guns you had on it and the additional auxiliary functions on it and all the little bibs and bobs you have on it. And in that way, not only create an achievement symbol for the player, but also customize it for that player to make sure that his experience and his journey through the game was unique, and it was unique for him and it was unique for us as well. So yeah, that's one of the things we're planning to do.
interesting. So basically you want to customize like the achievement for each of the player and then you said like ship out even like a physical form of a ship, right? Fancy. Yeah. So I mean if I understand it right, sounds like the typical profile. I guess in like the computer PC or like the IT world, there's a term like power user. I'm not sure what's the equivalent here, like but like power gamer or
Yeah,
like
I
heavy
mean,
gamer or something of
yeah,
a
what's the profile?
diesel punk cyber
Yep,
ship something. I don't
yep,
know.
yep. It's less sci-fi. It's more low tech dieselpunk stuff. But I guess the way many people play Warhammer, the physical game, there's some people who just get a few of the content and they just enjoy playing it. But for the people who really like, their army, or I don't know, I'm not so well versed in Warhammer, but the people who really like it, basically they get everything for their faction or for their army. And because it's kind of spaced out, and because over time the cost is manageable, they don't care. They're like, okay, I like this content, I get everything, and I feel that I've gotten my enjoyment from the value that I paid. So that's the feeling I felt a lot playing a lot of other games. And yeah, that's I think that's close to what many of our players will be feeling, I think.
Interesting. So would you consider like Warhammer like one of the similar type of game?
Again, I haven't played that much Warhammer. I'm not knowledgeable about it, but I have many friends who play it, and they've shown me then their mountains of their hordes of little soldiers and the models they have. Some of the models are humongous. And whenever the topic of price comes up, they're always like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. It was so much fun. I know that it's not worth discussing because obviously they had so much fun with it that they don't even consider it uh, too big or anything. So, and that's why I said there's a type of player that likes to buy, I don't know, 100 games per year or 200 games per year and play a little bit here and there. And there's a player who's had a good experience with one game, so whenever that game brings out something new, they're like, oh yeah, I want to play that.
I see. And you are trying to optimize for the latter group, right? Like the one that's focused like deep and dive into, like you said, explore
Yeah,
all the downloadable content and extra skins and fancy stuff like tackle on top. Okay.
yeah. I like experiences that build as time goes on. I guess that's why I like Dungeons and Dragons in that sense, because Dungeons and Dragons is not like tic tac toe. You don't play a 30-second match and it's done and then it's a reset. Although that has its own fun, of course. But personally, I like this experience that the longer you do it and the longer you play it together with other people, the more there is that feeling of camaraderie and there's a history of the game, right? So imagine, for example, if you and three of your friends, you're always playing together as a squad in the multiplayer version of the game, then the first times you're just learning things and you're enjoying the game, but over time you know how each one of you plays. You know who likes to be the attacker and who likes to be the supporter and who likes to, I don't know, organize the team and so on. And over time you just, all these things become standard. They become like subconscious capabilities for you, and you, with every new game you play, then you jump into the tactics, what we want to do, who is the enemy, how are we going to take them down. And there is this I don't know, group camaraderie feeling that's, I think, builds up nicely over time.
Okay. So community basically. Yeah. Like with a very tight knit and um, close community that play with each
Yeah,
other and build
yeah,
experience, make it more fun over time, right?
exactly, exactly. And another reason why I was interested in this is because I played lots of free to play games I mean, up to now. And what I noticed is that I don't know what to call it. I don't know if the gaming community has a name for this, but I would call it kind of multiplayer fatigue or match fatigue. So I'm talking about the case where you have a multiplayer game, online multiplayer.
I think those are like the freemium game you're talking about, right? Like free to play, but obviously you
Right.
can buy to get the extra booster powers, things like that, right?
Right, right. And
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
interestingly, even games that are not free, but they have a low barrier to entry, a low price to play,
Hmm.
they also have they have this phenomenon where when you first start playing the game, you're all excited and you're discovering the new weapons and the new abilities and what it's like to play in multiplayer. So you're very engaged. But over time, you still know you enjoy the game, but you come back from work tired and you have just a little bit of energy, and when you go to play an online match, you're like, come on, whatever, I just want to kill someone. And there's this fatigue where you know each individual match is not worth communicating with other new players on how to create a strategy or how to organize everyone to play well together to win. So many players display that behavior where they just, join the next match, and if they die, it's okay, we'll just go to the next match. And that happens in that environment, and it happens doubly so if the game is free to play, right? Because there was no investment to play the game, so you're like, okay, this game is free. If I don't like it, I'll just leave. So that's fine, but I guess that feeling is a little bit like, imagine trying to play soccer with all the other 10 guys in your team just not caring. So in the middle of the game, they're looking at their phone. You're like, come on, guys, we need to score. Like, yeah, well, whatever. I'm so tired. We're playing. So, of course, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? This is also a fun experience. But yeah, I think if possible, I want to focus in an experience where you can play with your friends as much as possible. And the game supports you in the sense that there is a little bit more clear roles about what each player is supposed to do, where even if you're playing with new people or random people, everybody kind of still knows their roles, so not that much communication is necessary. You sort of know what you're supposed to be doing. So there's better experience right from the beginning, and if you are playing with your friends, it's so much better.
Interesting. I think you basically just summarize a lot of I think the game mechanics of a lot of the free to play games. Obviously in the past I've tried a lot of these, and yeah, you get excited at first, like you download this like shiny new things, but after a while you kind of reach a limit, right? Where kind of like if you want to progress faster, you have to pay for it. But like if you pay for it, then you probably tend to spend more. I think there's an economics, like a sunk cost fallacy, where you spend the money already, right? So you want to play more, but yeah. So, but if you don't spend the money, then you most likely just leave the game and don't play anymore, because again, it's free to play, right? It doesn't really hurt.
Yes,
So
yes,
yeah,
you have felt it.
yeah,
You've experienced this, you know.
yeah. Well, I used to
Okay,
play when I was younger. Yeah.
okay, cool. Well, what I can do is hold one invite for you for the game. And if you're interested, we can maybe have you as a game character in our game. And yeah, you can experience that side of development as well, if you're interested, of course.
Interesting. Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can talk more about that after the show as well. Yeah, interesting. And then we can share more about that to the audience as well.
Cool. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
So
So
yeah,
so let's do this. Also, the five first people who I will leave a link down below to contact me. For the first five people who say they're interested in this, I will secure an invitation and a character spot for them as well. As a thanks for having me on today.
awesome. Yeah, yeah, for sure. We'll get to that part afterward. Just maybe a couple more questions before we get to that as well, and then yeah, for sure we'll come back to that. Um, so I'm curious, like to build this. Right now, you're just building one game, right? Just one game, like the
Yes.
dieselpunk airship, right? So how many people in your company are like pulling resources together and building this?
So this requires quite a bit of effort. The team is 11 people at the moment.
Interesting. And everyone all full time building on the game. You have game
We're
designer,
we're
artist,
we're
engineer.
busy, yeah.
I
I
see.
mean, in game development, it's not like a line production. It's not that every day everyone is doing the same thing. As the phases of the project move forward, things slightly change. But yeah, let's just say there's a lot to do.
Yeah, I bet. No, I'm quite sure. It's very busy with how they to build the game, and yeah. And any particular challenges that you guys facing at the moment?
I mean, just the normal things, right? And by normal things, I mean every time you're setting off to do a new game project, even if you have a clear idea of what the target is, you cannot know all the problems that will come up along the way. And this happens basically in every game project. So this piece of technology doesn't play well with that, or we got a cool new idea for the gameplay but it screws up this other part of the game, or we want to do this super cool visual effect in the game but then the frame rate tanks, and what are we going to do about that? So there's lots of issues like that, but that's exactly the stuff we plan for. The only other issue that happens a lot and is difficult to tackle in most projects is the question of gameplay quality, right? So, unfortunately, something that I've experienced in many of the places I worked at is typically when you work in a big company, every project has a budget. Now, that budget might become
Yeah.
a little bigger as time goes on. Maybe you can negotiate for more and so on, but let's say it's a fixed number. Typically, because us game developers like to make the game as good as possible, right? The motivation is noble. We will try to use as much time and as many resources as possible to improve what the game contains. So more features, better graphics, longer gameplay and all that. That will bring us dangerously close to the end of our budget, inevitably. And that's when everybody mini panics and says, we should start, play testing with outside players and thinking about release sometime soon, because if we run out of money and the game is not close to release state, then we'll have to cancel it. So at the last like 10 to 5% of the budget left, this rushed gameplay session happens, game testing session happens, and unfortunately it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, because there's no time left to do anything about it. So developers will fix as much as possible before release. And at that point, it's better to release than to not release, because if you don't release, all the money went for nothing. But even if you do, and if you do release, maybe you'll get some sales out of it. But that's when you see a lot of games that are coming out nowadays and for the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, where there's big releases happening with very popular franchises, very very polished looking titles, but they also have very very big problems that leave the players thinking, but this could have been prevented if they asked some normal people to play the game. And this is a recurring comment for many games that release in the last 10 years. And yeah, I know players are not aware of this side of development, but basically that's what explains it. So this is another area that we wanted to take a different approach and say, well, what if we prioritized these gameplay sessions with players? And that's where curating and maintaining our community is so important for us. Because again, what I've seen from my experience so far is that all these people in forums when the game is still in development, when they come and say, hey, this thing about the game is broken and you should fix it, and it's really important. So these players, I don't know, maybe sometimes they just want to be rude, but there's a good amount of them that are simply passionate about the game. So those are the players that have the potential of giving you very important feedback. And if the communication, is in a polite and constructive manner, their feedback can improve the game a lot. And when they realize that their feedback had that effect on the game, so in other words, when them spending their time playing the game and then instead of quitting and saying this game is too bad or it's not for me and so on and going to another game, instead they use their time to give feedback to the developers. If the developers listen to that and they show that they applied the fix to the game, or they try to improve it, and even try to call out the person who submitted the report and say, thank you, Mr. Whatever, whatever, thank you for letting us know we did this, let us know what you think. That person, in my experience, typically is going to be so happy that not only he's going to keep playing the game instead of leaving and keep putting in more constructive feedback, but also he's going to become one of the natural ambassadors for the game. That person usually goes to his friends and he says, hey guys, I played this game and I found this weird bug or weird problem with the game. And when I told them about it, they fixed it. That's so rare nowadays. Who does that? Usually, like, forums are full of complaints that, never get addressed, right? So again, I mean, for big company culture, that's always something that happens. But in my experience, when you listen to these voices and you take them seriously and you try to support them, you get so much more support back. So that is one of the things we really want to focus in.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Actually, you just said something about I think in like the IT and also startup world, right? Where this is like a build, measure, learn type of loop, right? With software, and it sounds like a lot of the big release game they didn't have the learn loop in there. They have the build, and I guess they just got to release, and they didn't complete the loop, right? The feedback, and then that helped to improve it. And basically, if you guys, to be honest, for me, it seems, I don't know, for being in the software IT world, it feels very quite obvious, but obviously it's like, but I think there's certain ways how big company or big franchises work, right? In trends and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So if you're the director of the game or a producer or something, it's also sometimes difficult to accept, right? Earlier in my career, I also felt that if I made a game, or even back to my Dungeons and Dragons games, if I thought of a story or a scenario and people didn't like it, that because it was something I made, it would be attached to my identity. So them not liking the game meant they don't like me, which is of course ridiculous, right?
yeah,
But emotionally, that took some time to sort out and to separate the two. And yeah, back in the day when I heard a complaint about the game, I thought, man, I did such a bad job, everybody hates this, and so on. So I took it as a negative thing overall. But then I thought, wait a minute, this person took time out of their lives not only to play the game but to come and tell me about it. So I could just say, that person is just weird or he just wants to complain, which, I don't know, to be fair, may be true. But definitely there is an opportunity here. If I can get to the bottom of what this complaint, what this bug report, what this feedback is about, A, I can improve the game, and B, gain an amazing ally in this game, and have a great relationship moving forward. So when I realized the opportunity there and the hidden desire behind this, complaint or bug report and so on, that's when it clicked, and I'm like, this is the best opportunity ever. It's something that I should use.
awesome. Yeah, totally makes sense. feedback is super important. You should always listen to the voice of customer. I think regardless of industry anyway. But yeah, this especially in game. Cool. Just two more questions for close out the show. Curious, since you've been in the game industry so long, how do you think the game industry will evolve in the future?
I hope it evolves to be closer to the gameplay experience, right? What I've seen so far from the big players in the space, and I mean, of course, not all of them are the same. They don't see games all the same way. But going from a typical big company business perspective, nobody wants to take a huge risk with a lot of money. We've all seen so many games that had gigantic budgets and couldn't get the quality where it should be. So we see a lot of games that are basically copies of different games with just the graphics replaced or just the story replaced and so on, or even not even that, just straight up copies of something else that just has the title changed. Which, I mean, for players it's not the most entertaining thing ever, but you understand it from a business perspective. They just don't want to take a huge risk. So at the same time, this is where I think that the games industry is very close to the movie industry, where you can, it's fine to copy something and it's fine to use famous actors or not famous actors. There's all these things you can do, but no matter what you do, it will come back to the same thing. For movies, it's the quality of the scenario, the how engaging every scene is. For games, it's, are you having fun, moment to moment playing this game? And sure, graphics can play a great role in attracting people or making you stop and marvel at the game every so often, but that effect will fade away because humans adjust. But it's the gameplay that creates this like high and low and high and low again, and it gives you this varied experience as you play. And creating that interesting gameplay somehow requires a lot of human input and a lot of human creativity. So I know there's a lot of talk about, what sort of things we can generate with AI and so on. But if we can do something towards this direction, I think it's going to be the most beneficial. And I hope in the future we see more resources put into this part.
Fascinating. Okay, so good to know that AI will not take away our jobs, at least for the game industry. Still require a lot of
Yeah.
human
Yeah, I
input
mean,
and
it's funny.
creativity.
Like everybody says that, and it's not just about games, right? It's about every job. I don't know about taking our jobs, but I hope it becomes a good enough tool, because right now, for many roles, it's not even at the point where it's a good enough tool, right? If you think about using AI for something, let's say there's a lawyer, and that lawyer worries that AI is going to write all the contracts from now on, and he will have nothing to do. If that's true or not, well, what happened since the AI boom? Did all lawyers suddenly quit? Well, no, of course not. They still have to go to work. They still have to do their stuff. But maybe AI can make their job a little bit faster. That's my hope, that AI can evolve to the point where it's a useful tool and a good help in whatever people choose to do.
Makes sense. Yeah, and I do think that my personal perspective is that AI should help to enhance or improve the way we work, right? Not like completely replace. I think it's still pretty far from being replaced, or like the AGI that we usually hear in like the news, right? I don't think it's gonna come anytime soon. So I think we're okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
a friend of mine who's an art director right now in another company was telling me this interesting story about art specifically. I was asking, what do you guys use AI for right now when it comes to images, to like character concepts and so on? It's like, honestly, we don't really use it that much. I'm like, really? Not even for like, concept art or brainstorming and so on? He's like, yeah, not even that, because artists are pretty good at that to begin with. If you ask an artist, a character illustrator, for example, give me a quick concept about a character who's got, I don't know, this feathered hat and this like cool jacket with spikes or whatever, and one blue eye, one green eye, whatever. They can do that pretty quickly. And yes, AI can do it fast too, but with AI you would have to go through several iterations just to get to the elements you want in the picture. So he said, because it takes so long and because it's easier to communicate with a human and they can create a more accurate concept of what you're describing, we just ask our artists to make the concept. And I said, okay, but how about the finished character then? If you start from the rough concept, to get to the finished product. Isn't that better to do with AI, like now that you know what you're aiming for? He said, well, you would think so, but just the other day, our company president asked one of the artists to create a character for one of their projects, basically. And from start to end, she had that character ready to be used as an in game asset in about 4 hours. So can that be done with AI with the same speed? And that's another thing that most people are not sensitive to. When artists learn how to display characters and to include all the important elements in the image, they try to evoke some emotion, while AI usually tries to just make things look, good enough. So, of course, you can have as many good enough images as you want, but how many character art have you seen that makes you feel something? Like someone is scared or sad or happy and so on. If you're aiming for something specific like that, then according to my friend, the handcrafted approach is much, much more effective.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think that's why a lot of these famous manga artists and illustrators are still very important, right? Because I don't think can reach AI can reach a point of consistency or be able to draw like the fine. I don't even know the word to describe it. Yeah, the art that gamers would be attracted to, right? There's some type of visual component there that
Yeah.
appealing to gamer. Cool. Cool. And yeah, final question. Where can people follow you? And I think earlier you were saying that you want to give, so I think now will be the time. Feel
Yeah.
free to
So
share
what
more
I'll
about that.
do,
Yeah.
what I'll do is we can continue after this, and I will also leave a link for you to share down below if you want, for the first 5 people who would be interested in being characters in our game that I described today. Um, Book a call with me and let's talk about it.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure to do it. It's all online, right?
Yes, the meeting is all online.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Sure. I'll make sure to put a link down here for the show notes for people to follow you and your company and
Mhm.
also to get in touch. So yeah, keep in mind, guys. For the first 5 you're interested, you can get a free character. You said the ship or the captain.
So it's going to be a character in the crew of the ship.
Okay.
There is some choices there. Let's talk about it.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Awesome. Thanks. Well, once again, Santos, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show today, talking about what you guys are building with your very exciting, if I can say it right, dieselpunk ship fighting game, multiplayer fighting game, something like that.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep.
Cool.
Perfect.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, and also sharing for the insights with us about the gaming industry. I've learned a lot today, and also I'm sure my audience also learned a lot. So once again, thanks for joining.
Thank you as well. Thank you for the invitation. Have a good day.
Thank you. And we're back to my studio. What do you think about the multiplayer invitation only dieselpunk airship game that Xanthos and his team at Studio Vale are building? If you're interested in being a tester, feel free to use a link below to get connected with Xanthos and his team. For the next episode, we'll be talking to Slade High. He's the head of marketing at EtherFi. EtherFi is aiming to be the full-feature neo DeFi bank with a lofty goal, putting user in charge of their wealth. User can save, grow, and spend their crypto however they want. If you're interested in how crypto cards will help to shape everyday payment, then the next episode is for you. If you enjoyed this episode, please give a like and subscribe. It means a lot to us. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.